So I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. And I am going to first, for our first order of business, turn the meeting over to Maggie, who has something to share.
Thank you, Judy. I just wanted to take a moment tonight to recognize Bob Springett, the chair of the Dover Select Board, who sadly passed away earlier this week. Bob's record of service in Dover was remarkable. He's worked collaboratively with so many of us on many, many issues over his 2 terms as a selectman in Dover. Prior to joining the Select Board, Bob served as a member of the Capital Budget Committee for 2 terms and also 2 terms on the Dover School Committee, and 3 of them as chair. In everything that he did, he brought insight, tenacity, and a strategic eye to benefit our communities. His work in Dover is going to be long remembered, and the impact of everything he's done will be felt for years to come. I just wanted to send, on behalf of the school committee, our heartfelt condolences to Bob's family, and I just ask that we take a moment of silence to remember and honor our friend and colleague, Bob Springett. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Maggie. Let me now move on to community comments. Do we have any community comments? Is there anybody?
No.
Okay, good. Then we can move on. I don't have to read this preamble. And so the first thing that we're going to do is get a report from our 2 representatives from the high school, Angie Loeffler and Esther Marsuli.
We just finished our Spirit Week rally, and basically at the end of the week you would have like a mural competition and see which one. And during the week, the purpose was for the students to get dressed up based on the days of the week. For example, Monday, PJ Day. But also we gathered money for Doctors Without Borders. I believe we collected around $1,300 for it, which was yay. And the juniors won the mural competition, and the concept was Mamma Mia. The seniors won overall because I believe they donated a lot of money. Venmo helped, which was nice because no one had a lot of money. Cash with them. And also, we didn't have enough time at the end, which we should improve next year for the turkey tug. Yeah.
And so then our next task is going to be our town meeting. So it's kind of like an opportunity for the student body to voice any concerns or changes they want to see in the school. So each grade will meet separately, and it's kind of like a nice space. There aren't any teachers there, but except the guidance counselors will be there, and then the older people on student council usually go to the freshmen. So we'll each have a assigned block that everyone in the grade goes down to the auditorium, and we make slideshows about topics we think that students may have concerns on. So if that's new classes they want to see, or internet's always one. Last year we focused, our big takeaway from the town meetings were parking passes, which we hope to still work on that if possible. So after the town meetings, once we've gathered a ton of ideas from all different students, we kind of compile them into what we saw most often. And then we share them with Mr. Smith, and we meet with him, and then he helps us to guide us who to go to about certain issues. He helps us fix things that he can help with, and overall we've made some great changes, so we're excited to do that soon.
Thank you. Spirit Week sounds like it was a big success, and the town halls sound terrific. I'd be really interested to hear what you come up with. Thank you. Any other comments? No?
We really appreciate, though, your coming and your updates.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Oh, anytime.
What?
Who won, Barbie or Oppenheimer?
Well, it was kind of...
It was mixed.
Yeah, it was mixed.
It was Barbenheimer for some reason. And I think the math department, they already had the Barbie costumes. So they all Barbie,
yeah,
and also
Barbie.
I think some other helping teachers, they also dressed up as Barbie.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe Barbie won.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are easier costumes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
You know?
One of the theme days, Barbie.
Yeah, it was Barbie versus Oppenheimer. So like you
Oh,
could dress
on the
up.
day you
Yeah,
picked.
yeah.
So I was in a grocery store after school and saw a couple of Barbies, and I thought, it was really fun.
Yeah.
Maybe had a real impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Out in the community.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for coming.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
luck with all your homework. If you need to scoot, that's totally fine.
Okay. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you. So now moving on to the superintendent's comments.
Sure. Mine will be brief, and then I'm going to turn it over to Denny for a few highlights. I just want to remind everyone that Mary Poppins the Musical starts on Thursday, and it's my understanding we're going to have some flying characters, which no surprise to the Dover-Sherborn community that we would go above and beyond. But please make sure you get your tickets and that you come to support our students. And secondly, I just want to highlight one of the memos that I provided in your packet around the peer leadership training that we're doing at the middle school. It started last week, and Denny and I came over today to get to see some of the work in action, and it was absolutely fabulous to see our student leaders working in different groups, doing some role playing and some problem solving, really with the idea of preparing them to not only themselves but support their peers in challenging name calling, put downs, and insensitive remarks that they might hear or see in the hallway. So that whole idea that came out of the equity audit about being able to address things in the moment, it's great that we are empowering our students to be able to do that. And so they will continue to meet as an organization or as a group themselves during H block and talk about programming that they want to customize for their peers here at the middle school. So great program. Denny, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, the great lessons that they were leading on how you go from being a bystander to becoming an ally, which so they were practicing strategies and role playing, and they're going to get to deliver these lessons to their peers, which is going to be very powerful.
Yeah, I wish we could do that in the rest of life. Okay,
We're starting young; they will grow.
I think, and in all seriousness, I think that is really important, and as they grow up, hopefully will be a more, able to talk to one another community.
Absolutely. I happen to think it fits right in with our portrait of a graduate, so I appreciate this work.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, I'm trying to think, maybe 6 or 7 years ago at this point, we had a program that I think was similar with Roots and Wings. Mm-hmm. So is this kind of the same overarching ideas but a different group? Okay.
Yeah, this is sponsored through the ADL, and I know Mr. Smith has been doing some work with the high school students around ADL, so it's a nice kind of streamline that training our students, and then they'll come up and be able to do the next phase of learning and training, or a new group of students when they get to high school.
Right. 3 years ago, we trained a number of students on the ADL's World of Difference program. Mm-hmm. And this past year, we also developed a conflict resolution peer mediation group, similarly with Metro West Mediation Services, and they actually mediate legal, business, and school, so a lot of real-life applications.
That's great.
Aside from that, Superintendent's report is also going to cover some of the health standards. I know that that's been a question that has come up a few times recently, and I was at the Span DS event of screenagers, and I know the health curriculum was quite an area of interest for parents as to what we teach when, so I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Conklin to give you a high-level overview.
Yep, thank you. So in your packets, basically went in and worked with our wonderful health educators to look at some of the major curriculum highlights in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade health, and specifically the areas of substance use and misuse that we cover. We're in an interesting place right now where the new health frameworks just got passed in the fall. So right now our educators are in the process of reading through those, getting to know them, and seeing where there might be a gap between, the last frameworks were in 1999, so what they might need to add or supplement in order to meet the revised frameworks. So on our professional development day last Monday, teachers had a really great opportunity to meet K through 12, which you don't get a lot of opportunities with our gym teachers, our health teachers, to all meet together. To begin to unpack the frameworks and to look at the way they're organized, to look at the health practices. So that is well underway, that unpacking those new frameworks. You can see in your packet the major highlights from 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, as well as some potential next steps that we're thinking about in terms of health. One of the things that we have been discussing is how we can add health to kind of some of the lower grades. So we've been thinking about ways that we can insert 6th grade health, because currently there isn't a 6th grade health class. Laura McGovern has been doing research on our comparable districts and what kind of health programs are used at the elementary level. So she started a spreadsheet, and we're looking at the types of curriculum that are being used at the elementary level, what grades get them, how often is the health curriculum delivered, is it through their physical education classes, or is it through another part of the day? So we're gathering more information about that. We're doing some research on best practices around substance use and misuse education, and figuring out what programs and what curriculum, what materials are most effective for students, very specifically at the high school level. And we are going to continue to, sorry, I lost my train of thought on this one. And we're also reaching out to our kind of local high schools as well to see what their health sequence looks like, whether it's just 9th grade, whether it's 9th and 10th grade, just so we can get a better sense of what local districts are offering in terms of health education. So that is my update. I don't know if people have questions about the information that was in the packet. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one thing. Yeah, I'm now the positive representative, and this did come up in the meeting that we had. And parents are interested to know if there's programming at 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Mm-hmm. And if it's not formal health education program, what is the structure at the upper level, at the upper grades?
Yep, I mean, so that's something that we are continuing to think about, how we can reinforce those concepts. You know, students take wellness electives throughout the rest of their high school experience after their 9th grade health, and there are a lot of concepts about well-being that are built into it. But we are exploring our options on ways that we can supplement that experience after 9th grade. So it's part of the research process and talking to other health directors. Laura McGovern has been talking to our job-alike groups. So right now we're just trying to get the information about what other high schools are doing, what's been effective for them, and then hopefully we'll be able to take that and figure out some good next steps for Dover-Sherborn.
I think we mentioned too at the last meeting how our SROs are meeting with student athletes and members, or students who participate in the arts program. So that's in every season thing, grades 9 through 12. And however, we realized that not all of our students participate in athletics or in the arts. So we're trying to figure out how we can get to all of our students. And that is a perfect segue, if you're done with questions, into Kate's presentation.
Can I just ask one last question? And maybe you're nervous. I think it's great. I'll be really curious to learn what other districts are doing and what your research finds. And I'm just curious if you or Laura has a timeline and when we will hear about what you guys find.
I guess within a month-ish. So we've already gathered a lot of data from the elementary level, and we're just starting to compile a lot of the high school data. So it's underway.
And I think it's two-pronged, not only learning what our comparable districts do in other districts, but also thinking about what actually works on kids.
Yeah.
Because we know some programs work and some don't. So what is effective and when?
Yeah.
Because as we know, there's multiple factors that go into this education piece.
Yeah.
And if I also may too say, another important aspect of this is a community issue. And there's got to be greater parent input and buy-in into this. I'm encouraged that Span DS has rediscovered and is, reinvigorated, and the fact that we had the screenagers, but we need more people to come to these events. It's the same 30, 40 people who are kind of preaching to the choir, and we know that they are advocates of that. We need more parents and people in the community also to step up. I'd love to see the boards of health get involved with this as well, and that's why I truly believe that this is not just a school issue. This is a community-wide issue, and we need to see everyone play that part. Laura plays a role as the department head, but just plays a piece of it. She can't be everything to this entire issue. I say this with all sincerity. Friday night, Saturday night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, schools have no oversight. And unfortunately, that's when a lot of these difficult and dangerous decisions are made, and that's why we need greater parent community connection with this whole problem, so that we can, fortunately or hopefully, never have the tragedies we have faced. I know that the community is hurting, and I can certainly assure you that the teaching community at Dover-Sherborn is also hurting. And we have gone through a lot, and we want to partner with the community, but we need the community's help.
I appreciate you saying that, and I know that those are hard things. They're hard things to say, and I think that one of the things that I've always valued about the high school wellness program is that, like, to your point, and to the parents at Positive, one of the things that I've always thought is a big plus of our program is once you get to 10th grade as a student, you get to choose what you take for health. Like, there are no more you have to's. And I think that for high school students, where I don't know about your memories of high school gym class, but mine were not so hot. And I think that has been a huge driver of positive engagement, that kids can choose if they want to take CPR, or they want to take RAD, or they want to do a walking club, or they want to learn how to play squash, or whatever, the ropes. And I don't, as much as we do need to address this problem, I don't want to throw, it's an easy solution to be like, if we teach them in 10th grade and we make them sit there and we teach them, that it will fix the problem. And I think that research tells us it won't. That doesn't mean that, I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you know what I mean, like in terms of how we do wellness, because I actually think that's one of the huge pros of our curriculum, is that that's one place where kids get some voice and choice. That's all. I don't want to get on a soapbox about it.
Thank you. And that's the point of not just checking a box to say we're going to sit the kids down for 45 minutes and solve a problem, and figuring out what really works. And again, when Kate starts to talk about our new partnership, I think there's going to be a lot of insight from people who've been doing research on this for years and years and years.
I just want to point out that, if we look at the metro, like if we look at the youth behavioral risk survey, and 10th grade is when our students tend to engage in much riskier behaviors. So I think, it's worth a deep dive into what's going on at that time. And if it's not, a health class doesn't need to be the only answer. I think we definitely need to be responding, though, as a community and as a school community.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that I fully agree this is a community, family, school, community issue. And, I have been pushing to look at the high school curriculum again, because I feel it's a piece, it's one piece. And we have the kids here, and, like Colleen said, maybe it's not part of, if it's not going to be part of the health choices, which, yes, I would have loved in high school and didn't get that choice, but we have them, and so maybe to find some way to revisit, and that's just one piece. I fully agree.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, can I just add, one of the goals that we have in each of the 4 schools and as a district this year is really around communication. So we've been talking about how do we provide information to our families, to our community about, our academic excellence and all of the work that's happening in the classroom, but also beyond newsletters, how do we take advantage of our captive audience? We have a captive audience of students for 6 hours a day. We sometimes have a captive audience of parents. And so how can we use those opportunities to get the messages across that we really need to get, whether it's around, school goals, or whether it's around substance prevention use, et cetera. So trying to find ways to broaden the community audience for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to add, John, you're absolutely right. And for me personally, it's like the schools are the low-hanging fruit. It makes us feel empowered, like there's something we can do. But you're absolutely right that a large portion of this needs to fall in the community, and the community needs to be doing something. It isn't. It's not just us here,
right?
So. All right. Are we?
So on that topic,
Perfect segue.
There have been a few times that I was going to jump in. But, so we have had a program since 2016. It's really a state-mandated screening, and it's a screening, brief intervention and referral to treatment for alcohol and substance use. So we've been, for the past 7 years, completing with sophomores a 15-minute in-person survey with our existing staff on top of kind of all of the other many things that we have. So last year, our nurse leader applied to be part of a study through MGH, and it was, the first piece was to really look at, we weren't really sure which group we were going to be in. So actually the program was to look at SBIRT and how effective it is and how true the information is. And we were excited just about the opportunity to engage and make sure that this tool was working and giving us true information using our current staff. So it ended up, too, that there is a part of the study, it's 40 schools within Massachusetts that are part of the study. 20 of the schools will do just that. We'll continue with the way that they've been using the survey. We'll be sharing information and sharing feedback. The other 20, which is our group, actually is getting a youth wellness coach that will come to the district for 2 days a week for the next 5 years to help us to deliver the to do the screenings, but also to do interventions and to do work. The way that we meet with them every single week. We have that will continue throughout the time that this program continues, because they want to make sure that they're getting the information from us. They're helping to, once the surveys are delivered, they'll help compile the information. We're hopeful that the program still does focus on sophomores, but we also are hoping to build it to the junior class as well, now that we have this added staffing and added programs. Another piece that we're looking at is how we can augment this person's skill set. They are trained in multiple different programs, just some of which are I Decide, which really is around peer pressure, and Project AMP, which I included in this information too. But it's really looking at, that would be from the survey data. We've learned there are some students to target and some added levels of intervention, but it also, the youth wellness coach could also push into advisories or into like the junior seminars or sophomore, like it can push into already existing structures. But we will meet with them and continue to talk about how best to use this added support. But it really is quite a benefit, and we're really excited about this program.
That's great.
So.
Happy to hear about that.
Questions?
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
How did we get so lucky?
I know. Megan Smith, our nurse leader last year, was really great.
Yeah.
To find this for us.
I think it's a perfect example of a tiered intervention model. So tier 1 will be all students have access to this person and a touch point, whether it's sophomore, junior, even senior year. And then those who are identified as needing tier 2 support or tier 3 support, this person will be kind of either providing that or a venue to get that support.
And can I just clarify? It says as youth peers. So are they tend to be younger?
They're going to be younger, but they are going to be vetted, and it's a coach. So it's someone who has gone through training. It won't be someone of high school age. It will be someone through
a young adult.
Yes, a young adult.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking forward to it too, to help perhaps provide our guidance staff and administrators and even wellness staff with some trainings as well. So we see the advantage of this on that side, and then also the school side. And one of the things we're trying to think about is a way in which we can capture that audience of both students and parents. And so we're hoping to see if they've got ideas. One idea that I have is having an evening as freshmen come into the high school to have a parent or a guardian come with them to introduce them to the high school, but then also to introduce them to a lot of these important topics. Now, whether we can mandate that or not, I don't know. But I think if we really want to capture everybody, we do need to have some sort of strength behind it to make sure that everyone's getting this message.
That's great.
One of the great things too on that topic Kate was mentioning today is as we start to figure out how best to utilize this person's hours, because two days a week is a blessing, right?
Yeah.
And it's more time than we would need to do the expert survey, so we can really utilize them in other ways. But for students who are identified as needing tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, how do we bring their parents into the conversation and make them part of the solution? So
That's great.
And we'll have this person for 5 years? Wow.
I'm hoping it's the same person, but we'll have a person. Yes. Turnover these days, but yes.
for free.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
And they'll work with the SROs as well.
Yeah, so they have offered so far. We've kept it as the school team, and we have the nurse leader, the school nurse, Ellen Rowley, Tim O'Mara, myself. And so every time we meet every week, so sometimes they'll say, oh, for the next topic and agenda, can we add more of the school counselors or more of the adjustment counselors who've been part of the screenings before. So definitely, and obviously, this is my thing to read. So we will be adding more people to the discussion. Laura McGovern has been somebody who, as the agenda topics make sense, they will be joining the meetings as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you. This is very exciting.
Yeah.
I know.
Really exciting. Yeah, like how did we get so lucky? It's really. All right. Any other questions? All right. So now I guess we'll move on to. I'm so sorry, Mr. Smith.
Are you?
Oh,
ready
yeah.
to
You
go?
want me to do?
And then we can do financial all at once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't see that.
No, not a
oh,
problem at
God,
all.
you were right. I'm sorry.
My pleasure to present to you the first read of the program of studies, which obviously encapsulates all of the courses that students can take during their 4 years at Dover-Sherborn High School. Each year, the departments will examine this. Academic Standards, which is a group that looks and examines new courses, changing courses, altering courses. It's made up of some of the same people, but then there's also some guidance staff on that as well. And so each year we present to the Regional School Committee for your review, feedback, and then ultimately, hopefully, approval, a program of studies. And each year we do some minor detail. It might just be some wording. It may be realigning things, bringing things up to current trends. So I just want to talk about a few of the bigger ones, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So one of the first things that we did make some changes to under the homework policy, we've changed the website piece, which doesn't necessarily mean that teachers won't have websites. It's just as a school and really as a district, we are a Google Classroom organization, and our kids really have become accustomed to that. It was a silver lining during the pandemic, and it continues on, so we just made that change. We did a lot of work around placement review process for grades 9 through 12. Some of the departments still have some of their own criteria, but the process is now uniform. So in the past, that was something that was confusing. If it was social studies, you had to do this, then that. If it was English, it might look a little different. And for families and for students, it could be confusing. This way, it's all the same process to go through. We've also opened up the process a lot to give families and students the final say on these courses. Still looking at data and looking at some testing and looking at some other pieces to make sure that this is in fact the right placement for them. But the review process and the placement process will have live links. If you can, I don't know if did they receive this copy here? Mm-hmm. Okay. So each of those departments will have live links that you would be able to check on. So if you're interested in the review process for science, you can click on it and see what then needs to take place. One of the things that we're really trying to communicate home to families is to incorporate this prior to leaving for the summer, because really once it does come to the summer, We have a limited number of people, counselors are in and out, and sometimes our kids and our families become a little bit stressed saying, well, I was supposed to place into this and I want to now be in that. And we have to say, well, you may have to wait until the end of August, and that's very stressful. So the more we can front load up front and have a clear process, people will know going into the summer kind of where they're going to be. There's always going to be a few exceptions, and of course we always we're very fortunate to have students move into the community, and so obviously we still have to have a process, but if we can handle the majority of them through that placement process, we will. Another thing that we kind of, in some cases you'll see Stanford and Johns Hopkins, there were some advanced courses that at one time we offered. And it's not that kids can't take them, it's that we now have virtual high school and we have other options that the district actually pays for. So in the past, if you wanted one of those courses because you had already exited out of all of our courses, say you were a really high-end math student, the former department chair in mathematics, Jim Baruti, put this in so that you could then take one of those courses to continue your curriculum onward into college and university. We now have virtual high school where you can be taking these advanced courses and it's not costing families thousands of dollars. So that's why we took it out. If somebody wanted to take one of those courses and they had already completed everything else, could they still? Sure. But I think that you really have to think about, okay, what's going to be in the best interest of the family financially if you can get a course through virtual high school that is paid for as opposed to an outside course. Still is a family choice. Another area that we made some changes in addition to the placement was the adding of some new courses. So the first one is in the math section. You may remember a couple years ago we added a course called Financial Literacy, which has been a huge hit, which is great and it's doing really well. We now have the bookend course to this, which is Business Marketing and Public Speaking. And it's going to be a course that you can actually take as a second semester or a second piece to financial literacy, or you can actually take it as a technology engineering elective credit. So we're giving kids flexibility within that. The person who will be teaching that has a business degree. Also, for those of you who are in the world of public speaking, has done Toastmasters, which is really cool, and has a computer science background. So we really feel like this will be really interesting. When we survey kids about courses they're interested in, but also fields, academic fields they go into, business is certainly one of them, whether it's their mother, their father, long family history of it. So we really need to get up to speed and to make sure that we're offering business courses. And this is really going to be sort of the first one that we will offer, this marketing course. And as I said, that'll be a semester-based course in which you can take it at the CP or the honors level. And so each of the new courses we have coming in, we always try to do that. It would be open to grades 11 and 12 because realistically, that's where most of our kids, if they're going to be taking the financial literacy, that's where they are because they've already taken the Algebra 2 and likely the pre-calculus courses. The nice part there is you have some flexibility as to how you want that course to count. We do the same with a couple of our other courses in technology and engineering too. We've had a intro course in CAD in which we've given kids credits across either technology, engineering, and we even had a situation where students need it for science purposes. The other major course is computer science. AP Computer Science A. Really excited because we really have developed a pretty rigorous and strong computer science program from just a few years ago. And so in addition to some of the elective courses they can take, this year students can take principles, AP Computer Science principles. Now they will have another course on top of that for those kids who really want to pursue computer science or just love the subject. That would be a course that would follow the principles course, and that would be an advanced placement course that we're offering. The following year, we're hoping to bring to your table for approval a robotics course, which would be open to college prep and honors students. And then also, we're going to be establishing an interdisciplinary course taught by 3 teachers across different academic areas. And they're in the midst right now of doing site visits, developing curriculum, attending conferences, and then putting that into place for the following year. So next year, there'll be 2 courses, this business course and the computer science course. The following year, there will be a robotics course and the interdisciplinary course, which we don't have a name for yet. After that, it's really just a lot of, small changes that have been made in comparison to some of the bigger pieces that I just outlined to you. So I am happy to take any questions or feedback for this process.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Just want to say thank you so much. I think new courses are exciting, and I recognize they take so much work and thought to structure it well within the kind of constraints of a school and to try to do well. It sounds like you have a great selection of staff to take on the challenge, which is great. My question, I guess, is about the business and marketing course. It's a semester course that students could take either in fall or spring. When it's
Yes,
offered?
correct.
And it doesn't have to happen kind of coupled with financial literacy.
It does not. It can be a standalone, or they can bookend it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. Has anyone ever expressed interest in an econ course?
We have economics.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We have economics, but what we are talking about doing is, in the future, breaking our current economics course and putting it in the mathematics department. It currently lives in social studies, but realistically, the course itself has a mathematical concept to it because it's taught by a math teacher. We do have somebody who we just hired this year who actually has an econ background and would be interested in doing perhaps a macroeconomics that would be more along the humanities, social studies end of things.
Because I do know some kids have been like, the econ, it's enjoyable, except some of them with the math. And so that's why I was like, I feel like some students who have more of a basis find it easier.
Yeah, no, and that's what we're absolutely looking to do.
Yeah.
Angie, you're absolutely right, to have that basis. One of the things that I stress and I take great pride in is making sure that when we add these new courses, that obviously we're fulfilling needs that kids have, but we're also giving them a multitude of choices across all areas, right? So if the majority of our kids do go into science and business, that's great, but I don't want to forget those kids who do want to go into the humanities, who want to go into music, who want to go into drama, because we're a comprehensive high school. We can't lose that perspective.
I agree.
To that point, I will add, because it's sort of on topic, that when we were doing our space audit study, which we're in the process of reviewing the first draft, one of their comments, they spent a lot of time actually looking deep into all the courses we offer, how we use the building, but they were actually astounded at how many courses we offer given our size. And gave us, when you read the report, huge kudos for that, because the sort of the consultant that they had looking at that says, I do this all over the country, and I'm just like blown away. They're also confused. I'll have to say, I have to keep explaining to them how we sort of combine like CP and honors at times in order, right? So they keep thinking it's 2 separate classes. I'm like, no, it's one class,
right?
But it's different assessments. But it's a way that we're able to do that,
right?
Offer so much, and that we're creative in how we put the classes together. So you'll read about that, but I think it falls into, as Beth reminded me when we were talking about this, just how lucky we are, and the breadth of choices that we give our students to prepare them.
Appreciate that.
As part of this feasibility plan, we are examining ways in which we can actually have a dedicated robotics makerspace classroom, which would be awesome.
Mr. Smith is willing to give up his office.
Sure, gave up the conference room. Why not? No, we right now we have a mathematics classroom where central office purchased for us some workbenches and other supply things. So we're making it work in a part of a math classroom, but when that robot needs to run and work, we need to then take it out of there and then bring it into the lobby. And this way, if we have a dedicated space, we can do a lot more. And then we're even thinking that makerspace could be great for really a bunch of other classes within the technology department, but actually even in mathematics, when they're doing a lot of their work, sometimes they'll come out of their classrooms and they will do some experiments or do some things with geometry. We can actually have them sign into that classroom and use that space. So trying to get creative with what we've got. Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're ready to move on to Dawn.
So we'll swing back up.
Kate and John go.
Oh my God, yes.
If you want to go, you're
Yeah.
welcome to stay. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta do more time than I guess.
You know, I thought that you would just know that and sneak out.
No,
but
that's
I'm glad Beth said that.
We're polite.
I would have.
We don't assume.
And Dawn is not offended.
I'm not offended at all.
I actually read through it all, so don't quiz me, but I did read through it.
Actually, John, do you want to take your copy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can get you to go home and read it.
Yes.
We
Thank you
could
very
expect the financial literacy students to read the report and come back and present to us
Absolutely.
their analysis.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They're the ones teaching me all about the stock market, determining whether I can retire in reasonable time or if I'm going to have to wait a lot longer. I don't know, Mr. Smith. You may have to wait a little bit longer right now. Things are a little rocky. I said, okay.
For the advice.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go back up and we'll talk about the warrant report. Obviously, your standard report is in the packet for your review, and also included is sort of your fiscal year 24 report, which I do think is a good tool to use as you're looking at your budget. It's a tool that we use because you can sort of see where we are. Not that we're not that far into the year, although we feel like we're that far into the year, but it just gives you some perspective on where we stand in the different function codes as you're reviewing your budget. So as I typically do in your narrative is in bold is new information. So there are a few pieces of information. We have encumbered the utilities. We're waiting to get a little more experience. Our electricity supply rate is scheduled to actually already went into the new rate effect on December 1st. And that's where we're seeing that 40% increase. Waiting to see also what happens to delivery on top of that and how that sort of feeds in. So we probably will maybe refine your encumbrances once we start getting the first bill or two. But we have pulled all of that. The gas, the phone, the electric, and the water has now been encumbered. So you'll notice that there's been some money taken from the bottom line because we've encumbered those expenses. Also included this month is your quarterly statement of special revenue and revolving funds. That is as of September 30th. We keep that on the quarter. Again, that's another good piece of information to use when we're looking at the budget because it shows you other funds that we have access to and other funds that we use for various sources. It sort of shows you the activity to date on those and remind you of the categories that we have. So there's not a lot of new information. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue or status of appropriations? Okay, that's good. Then on the capital projects, the new piece of information. So the bleachers have been ordered. They're due for delivery in May. It's okay if that's a little bit late. My consultants have told me because we still have to do all the foundation and site work, which can't take place until after school ends. So we should be fine on the supply side of getting the delivery of the kit. There were, so I'm bringing forward to you tonight a little bit of a higher cost estimate. When we did this last spring, we were looking at about $500,000, $500,000. Now that we have gotten the official sort of site design done and then sent to the bleacher company for true quotes, that went up 10%. And then they're also telling us that some of our foundation and site work, of course, these are estimates, and I'm hoping when we actually bid it, it will be less. But just because of prevailing wages and everything right now, all their numbers did go up a little bit. So we're looking at about $600,000. If you recall, we have about $300,000 secured. Once we know our final numbers, we're hoping to get the other little pieces that have to be bid out probably by the first of the year. Once we secure those bids, then we'll know our total number, and that's where we'll start working with the other groups that want to participate and with our own funds. If you look at your special revenue and revolving funds, there's some access there to make sure we've secured the $600,000. You will also see a piece of, just as a security blanket, that we've incorporated into your fiscal year 25 capital, just to sort of hold a little bit of money there too for this project. So we're excited about that. It's great that they're ordered. I've had constant communication with them. And now we'll just do the next piece, which is just sort of the foundation work, which is the cement, all the asphalt walking and such. So that's a great piece of news. Any questions on that piece?
Just grateful it's moving forward. I know that, just folks here for the budget, we have had bleachers that are non-compliant for people with differing abilities for obviously the lifetime of the bleachers. And that has impacted our students who haven't been able to attend their own school sporting games, as well as family members. And even though technically, because they're so old, they technically didn't have to be ADA compliant, it's just not ethically the right thing to do. So we hope you will appreciate that we know we're biting off a gigantic amount of money. And we think it's just ethically the right thing to do and important so that everybody who is part of our community can participate in our stuff.
And on top of the accessibility, it's raised to a level of safety.
They're not really safe.
No,
I was being honest. Don't go to the top and jump up and down. Don't do that.
That has been a new sort of where they're getting
the stomping. The stomping is not helpful, guys. Kids, don't stomp. Stop with the stomping.
Exactly. So fiscal year 23, just to sort of wrap up on that, everyone in the financial world is sort of delayed. This is the first time I've seen such a delay in our audit, but we're hoping to get our auditors in. But once they get in, they'll probably be able to wrap up. A lot of times they come and do their field work in October, which is great, but then there's other pieces that we have to wait for. So now this may just consolidate how much time we're actually working on it, which actually might not be a bad thing. But I'll keep you updated on that. So that's the update we have for you as to where we stand right now with operations. And if there's no further questions, okay. So we'll move on to the next year.
Why talk about one budget when you could talk about two?
Exactly. Let's go on. I can't wait to go to 26. So just to give thinking about that, right? So just to put a little perspective on it. So tonight is really, hopefully yesterday, and I apologize for the delay, but there's doing 3 budgets and trying to keep up with everything. We finalized these yesterday afternoon, got them all delivered. But keep in mind, this is sort of the pre-introduction to the budget. We'll be, discussing the budget over multiple meetings, and we have until March to finalize the budget. It's still preliminary in so many of the big ticket items that are beyond salaries that we're still waiting to finalize. So we brought forward tonight our best estimate of what things will look like in fiscal year 25 to meet sort of both the requirements of both our towns that they want budget placeholders delivered by actually this week. So this will keep us in compliance with that. We start our work really in October, when we sort of roll everything in, open the budget for all of our administrators to work with their departments, look at their individual line items, have their meetings. We then meet with everyone, central office together, with both all the different groups, and they bring forward their requests, we discuss them, and then internally in the business office, we're actually sort of building a lot of the budget. Just so you sort of understand sort of what the numbers represent, every employee that we have right now who's going to continue in fiscal year 25, their actual payroll rolls into our budget. And based on what our contracts are already settled for fiscal year 25. So that is 80% of your budget, and that's that number is known, which that's great.
Yeah.
From that, that piece where there's only a small piece that we're really sort of debating. if you assume that we're going to keep level service and keep all the personnel that we need. And then, of course, we'll talk about some of the new positions, and there are very few this year. We actually have been very fortunate over the years to add what we have needed, and so there's a few little asks, but very minimal. And then there's, because you're the region, not only is it sort of the school operations, but there's some of those pieces that fall into play because we carry our own health insurance. We deal with our retirement contributions. And so we have additional things in this budget that you won't see in your counterparts budget for like Colleen and Mark coming up from, and then Kate when you came up from Sherborn. So it's like a new little level. And then you have all the fun of calculating the assessments, because that's not straightforward either. So you can see where our budget lands, and you can look at that percentage. And it's always confusing to say, okay, so your budget, we're presenting a budget that's an increase of 4.88. That's not what the towns are seeing as far as increase in their assessment. So it's a little complicated, and it can fluctuate. And that's probably the biggest piece that can fluctuate from year to year is the enrollment, the minimum local contributions, how much revenue we're getting from outside of the town assessment. So that all plays into what they see on the end of their budget. So hopefully we've given you enough information in the book that you can sort of walk through and understand those pieces. And as you're spending time with it, I encourage you to send questions to Judy, because then we can prep the next couple of meetings, sort of delving into those things that you want to hear more about and better understand. And we'll bring some things on our own that we want to do, but also if you have things that you'd like to know more about, it's sort of a collaborative process. We want you to understand it. Any questions you have is beneficial for the town people to hear and for our advisory, and who's actually all here tonight, just so you know, these are all your Sherborn advisory representatives.
Thank you for coming.
I think Dover is watching live on TV. So that, so when you feel like the budget's been fully vetted, and that makes you feel more comfortable when we take it forward to the towns, and that we've done the best, our due diligence in bringing forward what is fiscally responsible for our citizens. So to that end, you have a couple different sections in your book. The first one is sort of a high level, sort of these are our budget assumptions. These are sort of the financial statistics, key budget drivers. It's just sort of a little synopsis. And then you can sort of see, and I think this is where it's helpful not to get away from all the little line items, but look at the bigger pieces. You'll see the revenue by large category, and you can see sort of the share of the members' assessments versus the little bit of state aid we get and some of the fees that we collect. We've been very fortunate this year, but you just remember it's going to continue with our interest income on the money that we do hold, and so that was I think we did over 100,000 last year. We're on course to do that this year, but you just never know what's going to happen, and that's not something you want to over budget. You also have more of a high level summary of your operating budget, which I think is actually of the expenditures, which I think is helpful to look at and understand before you delve into all the individual line items, just to see where your priorities should be as far as you review. So if you look at salaries and benefits, that is about 85% of your budget, and that is a big and that increase is 90% of the total $1.3 million increase. So really 90% of the increases are sitting in those two line items. And then the rest of it is just a bunch of ins and outs, and you will see that we really try to go back to our trend budgeting and look at actuals, and you'll see a lot of movement, a lot of red, where there's just accounts there that we traditionally just haven't been using. There's some accounts that are small that is almost not even worth the effort to have. So you'll see that I've put in there like no longer needed, because anything small that we would have put there, I have other places that we can put it. And it just streamlines our whole accounting process. But you will see red in that I think that we did take time this year to look at actuals. We feel comfortable that we're sort of past the COVID, and we understand the pricing, the market pricing, and so I think that is, that shows that we actually looked at guidance from both towns and that we looked at our actuals and didn't just rely on what we had budgeted in the past. The other expenditures, like I said, I think we're seeing some, if you look at the budget drivers, we're seeing some additional expenses around technology. If you recall, we bought so much new technology during COVID with our COVID funds. It's now, believe it or not, it's the replacement cycle for a big chunk of that. So you have the detail in your book behind the big pages where it shows what we're starting to replace. And at both the middle school and the high school, we're picking up the replacement of all of our staff devices. What we are starting to do, and you've seen this, of how we've handled the one-to-one purchase of the Chromebooks at the middle school, is engaging in 3-year leases, so we're not outright buying the devices, but actually helping to spread the cost over the 3 years. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can spread it over the 3 years and then sell them back to the vendor, or spread it over the 3 years and hold on to them. So we have, for the one-to-one with the Chromebooks, have decided to do the 3-year lease and hold on to them because we can use them in they're still sort of have some life in them, and we can use them in so many different venues, scenarios. The staff laptops, we're not quite sure, so we haven't made that determination because those aren't as useful in our operating world as the Chromebook. So it doesn't impact the pricing tremendously. It's actually something that our director of technology sees happening more and more with his job alikes, is that it's an easy way just to get them out of your hair, new ones in, old ones out, and then so you don't start accumulating things you don't need. So we're going to sort of fully vet that, but it doesn't change the pricing that much. But that is now what you're going to start seeing, is more and more of that replacement where we had sort of the free money, and it's coming back into our budget. We also were just seeing in our maintenance for our buildings, not only the utility costs I just spoke about with the electricity, but also just labor. The labor costs. So all of our contractors, we're seeing price increases. All of our maintenance, our preventative maintenance contracts, we're seeing price increases. We've been very lucky, I think, over the last couple of years to keep all those accounts stable from year to year, but we are seeing the need to put some increases in them this year. So you will see that we do have increases in all of our categories, but not astronomical. Again, your biggest piece of your increase is our salaries. And I think that's an important, let me go back to that just a little bit too. So if you recall all of the contracts that we settled, in the previous round of contracts, our COLA increase was more like in the 2 to 2.25. If you remember correctly, almost all of our contracts for the next 3 years were at the 3%. So right there, you've got that increase that we have to absorb. In addition, this year, we had some contracts, and there weren't a lot of people in these contracts because, as you know, our educators are the biggest employment group, and the other ones are fairly small. But we actually had to give market adjustments. So although we had a reserve in our budget this year, in some of those categories we exceeded that. So you're going to see some numbers that looked a little bit higher. That's because we had a little bit to pick up from expenses that we incurred this year that's being built into the budget for 25. So when you see, I think, for instance, the custodians show up at 4.99, where you're like, well, if the increase is 3, how's it 4.99? We're picking up what we hadn't budgeted in 25 that's already built into the base. So hopefully you'll have some time to look through this, just to give you some more information. We have included for your review the budget guidance from each town. I think that's definitely worthwhile in reading. I think both of them did a great job this year of just giving insight into the landscape of their own budget world and how we fit into that. The piece that I think that's the most informative for you are the trifold pages by line item. This is your one opportunity to see actually what builds the different categories that are in your monthly statement. And with that too, we've given you a summary of staffing, so you can just sort of see the categories, how many educators we have in the high school, how special education works, building administration, guidance, support services, etc. And now we're back. First time we've had the technology hardware supplement in a while, but you have sort of what makes up that line item both for the high school and the middle school. And then we also like to just remind committee members and the towns as well, the grants that we get that supplement our budget, and understanding that if we ever lost these grants, sort of the impact that would have, so that you can see what we do cover with the grants and what that means. We don't get our largest grant really is probably our SPED 240, which covers about 9 or 10 of your educational assistance on an annual basis. And again, our METCO grants, which helps fund the METCO program. The rest of the grants, we actually sort of get like the minimum amount. In our Title I grant, just so you know, it sort of fluctuates from year to year based on what our actual free and reduced lunch percentage is. So that can fluctuate, but we're always careful about how we use those funds so that when it fluctuates, we're not impacted by our normal operations.
Is it harder to determine a free and reduced lunch rate now that we have universal lunch in Massachusetts?
It is and it isn't. It's almost more electronically, and they're almost more identified beyond just filling out the paperwork.
So we're not being impacted. Like if I am a family who needs free and reduced lunch, I'm not going to fill out paperwork because my kids can get lunch anyway, right?
But there's so many other things that come with that classification that they are, you're still doing it. And so now it's almost like we're able to go in and it scans. And lets us know.
Like that, I guess that's my question is what's our mechanism for making sure families are still doing the requisite paperwork? Like what's in it for them?
Well, if they because there's more than just lunch.
Right, but we don't know. Like, I'm just
do
practically.
They know that? Is that what you mean?
Do we know? Like, if I am a family, how do I find out that I should still be doing the paperwork?
Right. Well, I think that if you are financially in that situation, I don't think it's the schools necessarily where you're also getting all of your guidance. But Janelle does. We do send that out to families at the beginning of the school year.
We send it out, but right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. Yeah. It might not be a conversation for now, but I'm just thinking about, like, as a person who in my life at different points has been in a family in crisis, like, that's a lot of paperwork. And if, like, I only think that it's impacting whether or not my kid is getting lunch, if my kid is getting lunch already, I may not fill out the 57 pages of paperwork because there's a royal pain.
Right. But I think if you need it, there's the knowledge that it opens more financial access than just free and reduced.
Does it?
Lunch. It does, yeah.
Like what?
Food, that you get food stamps.
Yeah, but that's a separate visit to a separate place.
Yeah, but it sort of triggers all that. I mean, Jeanette, like from what I understand, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I mean, just because I have family members who go through this, so actually know this, I just want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do for outreach, whatever that is.
That information goes home to every single family, right? Like regardless of,
that's a requirement. Yeah.
I mean, I see your point, but yeah.
And if the applications, depending on O'Donnell, come in September either, so then there's notification from food service when an application is going to expire, so that they can continue. So, because they're not all on the same renewal date. So throughout the year, applications can expire and need to be renewed, and that they work with them to do that.
Students need help with SAT registration fees, AP test scores.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Those kind of things.
Well, then that is an opportunity for us to say that this is something that if you're free and reduced lunch, you qualify for. So that's another way that we do the outreach is when
that's exactly what I'm getting at. Yes. And if we just have dignified ways for families to reach out, like if I haven't done it because I didn't think it was important, but now I might need help with SAT fees, someone in the school is going to help me to know I can fill out the paperwork.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to, we've been perfecting a better form so that when you do, you actually have to sign a release to allow us to be able to tell guidance or to be able to tell. But we do it also for, we do reduced tuition for Dita Shida, for
these are the other things I was
trying to
get at. Yes, field trips.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. So that's there for your review, and then also tonight you'll see the grants that we've received for 24 that's in consent agenda. And then there is, it sort of looks a little wacky, and if you know, some of the newer members who haven't seen the assessment calculation before want to have a little tutorial, it's sort of the spreadsheet where we dump all the numbers and it just calculates what we needed to say. But basically, after we take away, so we build our budget, after we take away the state aid that we're going to get, any other fees that we are going to raise, and sort of our interest income and miscellaneous, what's left then needs to be spread to the two towns. And it's predominantly decided based on enrollments. And so this year's enrollment is November actually is what sets the assessment for next year. And the state, though, computes the minimum local contribution. So you hear when we talk about Chapter 7 in the foundation budget, there's so much that we have to spend. And then based on your wealth and your property values and your population, the state computes what your minimum local contribution is. So that is already a base as to what we assess the towns. So then you take your budget, you take your what's left for operating expenses, you take away the minimum local contribution because you have to do that. The rest then is what's spread based on your assessment percentages. What will go into that too, we always build the first budget with using zero E&D, so our excess and deficiency. Our protocol has been that any excess revenues that we have in the current year, had we known we'd have those revenues, it would have helped offset the assessments for the current year, but we didn't know, right? So we take those excess revenues and we apply it to next year's. So once we get a better feel of where we stand, it looks like we're going to have a surplus in Chapter 71, which is our transportation. If we continue to have great returns on our investments, then we'll also have interest income, positive variances. We'll figure out what that number is, like in probably March when we meet, and we'll apply that. And that comes directly off the member's assessment as well. The good news this year is that there really was a minimal swing between the assessments. I think it was 0.35, still a little bit more in favor of Sherborn, but last year they had a 1 point something swing, and that actually has a huge financial impact to what they have to contribute to the region's budget. So it's a little more steady for this particular year. But it just shows you how then you look at operating debt, and then it comes down to what their total assessment is going to be. And then that's what you see when you go to your revenue, then you can see that should tie to what we are assessing them. This will continue to be updated. When the governor's budget comes out in January, we will get updated Chapter 70, Chapter 71, as well as minimum local contribution, and we'll run this again and see where we land. I will say we have seen swings in the minimum local contribution depending on what's happening in the towns and how the formula works. That's something that I don't have 6 months to divvy into, to dive into to try to figure out. So I'm always worried when that comes out to see how it's going to swing. But we will keep our fingers crossed that it all swings in the right way. And we should have updated numbers for you when we give you version 2 in February. Also included then is your enrollment. And so you have your 10-year historical and 5-year projections. Just to refresh your memory on how our projections work, it takes the in-migration and the out-migration as of October 1st. So we're always looking at everything as of October 1st, taking that percentage of did we have growth or did we see numbers decline, and applies that to the incoming current number, right? So you'll see numbers like 102. That means if you take the 5th grade, and in most cases it grows a little bit, so we pick up students, net pick up students, and then you see the 90s, it's where we lose students. So that's what those numbers are sort of showing. So we look at a 3-year and a 1-year. We look at the 1 year, we started doing that just because when the real estate market was going crazy, it was important to sort of pull that out and see how much of an impact that particular year was having versus what the 3-year average was. We have gone back now to where we really been going back to the 3-year average. It's more important at the elementaries where we have to really know class sizes. It doesn't have as huge of an impact here because you can have swings of, say, 50 students. It's not going to impact sort of what we do if you think about it spread across how many grades and how our classes are set up. So it's not as important of a factor unless we saw a huge decrease in enrollment. So our numbers, when we say level enrollment, these are sort of level enrollment for our operations. And then the critical number for the assessment, I just added the exhibit for you as by town, including our Boston students, the November enrollments, and those are the numbers you'll see embedded in the assessment calculation. So just a quick synopsis, we're looking at about, right now, about a 4.88% increase over fiscal year 24. In both towns, we're seeing Dover is about a 5.3% increase, and Sherborn's about a 6% increase. I always like to look and see where we were last year, so those numbers are also included for you. Healthcare, 12% is what I'm putting in right now. That has been a wild market. West Suburban, some of the issues that we're seeing is consolidation of plans. If you remember, we've lost Fallon. Tufts and Howard Pilgrim now will be officially combined into one plan for fiscal year 25. So we're looking to see how that's going to impact. Moving our lowest cost plan from Fallon to Blue Cross, we saw actually a reduction in our Blue Cross rates that first year it happened by like 20%. So we're definitely seeing more of our participants sign up for Blue Cross because it now has become the low cost plan, and because across West Suburban, because we have so many participants now, we're getting a better rate. Okay. So, right, think about how it's volume. We do have a board meeting this week. I'm not 100% sure that they're going to give us, it's going to be the rate setting meeting. What I think it is going to be a sort of a preliminary look as to where we are. And in addition, West Suburban is taking the time now to step back and have some consultants come in and do some RFPs about, are we doing the right thing? Mm-hmm. Should this be what we're doing? Does it make sense to continue, given the landscape of sort of healthcare right now? So as I get that information, we'll share it with you. 12% is the number that we're using. I'm hoping it is the high water mark. 12% is what the rates were coming in at last year. But if you remember, we settled at 10 because much like we have E&D, West Suburban has reserves, and that gives us some control over how the rates are set. And the determination last year was to set them at 10 to see if we could ride out some of these changes that we're seeing. We've also had a year and a half where medical services weren't necessarily accessed that much, so we're seeing some higher usage, I think, because there's some catch-up being used in healthcare, and then the runoff of Fallon. So there's just a lot going on. I know it's not what we want to hear, but I still think that we've got great healthcare plans for our employees. We still offer the high deductible and the benchmark. We have great incentives to attract people to the high deductible. The memorandum of agreement actually is up for renegotiations. We're in our third year of the second set of third year, so 6th year. And so it's an opportunity, once we sort of see what this landscape is going to be, we can come together and see if there's other ways that we can entice employees who participate in our healthcare plan to go to where it might be more economical for both of us. Yeah. And so we'll keep that in our forefront.
I was going to ask you if that was an opportunity we could take advantage.
Is.
How does what you're looking at for West Suburban comport with Sherborn's with MIAA?
So they're having a great year, I believe. But keep in mind that their plans aren't necessarily apples to apples.
No, yeah.
And the way that, because and Maggie and you were on the committee when we talked about this, looking at the Maya Blue Cross program, you are in a pool by yourself. So it would just be the region, and we're small. And so you could see wild swings in your in your premium increases because you don't have that sort of large volume to sort of, if you have an expensive case, to even it out. So that was our fear. That was one thing the consultant said, is that it's a little risky for a small entity to go like that. So what I would like to do is actually like take the Blue Cross that we have now, that in my mind has come a little bit like Maya, because so many West Suburban members.
That's what I was curious about. Can we do a crosswalk and just like,
Yeah, we sort of can, but again, they're working off some grandfathered plans, and we've moved, so it's a little hard to do apples to apples. But that's something that definitely I've pulled their sort of benefit charts to see if I could try to do something like that and compare it, just so we can get a feel. But that's another little area that's been quiet, but now it's sort of coming back up. But it's a $300,000 increase of your $1.3 million. So I just wanted to highlight that is a huge budget driver for the region, which is not what most schools talk about, because they don't have to talk about healthcare. So that's just a new a nuance that we have here, being the region. And then just the last thing I want to just sort of go over is what we've added for staffing positions. And so there's only really one full-time FTE that we're adding, and that is a counselor at the middle school. And so that would bring us up to 3 counselors. It would allow a counselor to be assigned to a student all through 6 through 8, much like how we do at the high school. I think that sort of then works within our strategic plan to sort of take care of the whole child, be able to work with them, learn. Right now you can switch back and forth depending on what team you're on. And so I think that's a huge value added that should reap a lot of benefits. It also then allows sort of another contact to do some of these smaller health seminars or something to that effect. So we are bringing that forward. You don't see a huge impact in that line item, mainly because we had a post fiscal year 24 budget change where we had a higher cost position leave the district, replaced it with a lower. So there's some cost savings there that helped offset adding that. So you almost would look at it and not even think that we added a position, which is a good thing. The other added positions were some that we've already added this year that we've brought to your attention. So we're incorporating them into the budget, and then a little bit, and so that's the 0.4 BCBA. It's being added into the budget. And then we've talked about, I'm still going to say ELL because that's what my budget says, but we had a 0.5 ELL. We increased it to a 0.8 in the fall, and we're asking for a 1.0 for fiscal year 25 based on the student cohorts and the caseloads that this person would need to undertake. And so there's really technically a 0.5 added there. So in total, it's like a 1.9, where some of these costs we're already incurring in fiscal year 24.
And these additional costs are the ones we've incurred this year. These are not nice to have. These are because of kids' IEPs. These are because of kids who have moved here, and we are federally responsible for helping kids who don't speak English. We have to support them. It's not just because we are being nice. Yeah, and we're nice.
Exactly. No, these are based on. We would never add anything in the current year that hadn't been budgeted if it wasn't a necessity for the student current cohort. But the other issue is that it's these were we cut ourselves so thin and everything. These were already part-time positions, and so it was actually beneficial to us that we had the person, because if we had to go out and look for a 0.2 or a 0.3, and so that makes it really easy for us, and then you're getting huge efficiencies in having that person already here, knows what's happening, and the students are benefiting from it. So that is, you'll see that across all of our schools, and it's something that, we cut, like I said, though, we're so conservative, and so we only add when we need to. But that's sort of how that operates.
Yeah.
So that is sort of hopefully I've thrown a lot of stuff, and I've been dreaming this for the last couple of weeks. But just to give you the timeline. So we will, if you have anything you want to talk about more in depth, and like I said, we're going to bring forward probably some more information. We have a meeting on January 16th. And then we will meet again on February 6th, which we then intend at that meeting to bring forward version 2.0. So all the new information that we've gathered, we should know the healthcare rates. In addition, if we will know that we've been able to finalize retirements. So any retirement savings we'll also bring forward. Remember that our educators are given an early retirement incentive if they let us know by November 1st that they're going to retire, so we can start planning for it. So we sort of have it in our heads. There might be a few, but they can rescind that as up until February 1st. So February 1st is the deadline, is the date where we know, okay, you've notified us you're retiring. You didn't tell us you're not retiring, so you're retiring. And then we know, and we can incorporate savings. And so that your February 6th meeting will be able to do that. So that'll give you an opportunity to look at version 2.0, because then on February 14th is our joint meeting with your whole committee, the whole committee of Sherborn Advisory, and the whole committee of Dover Warrant to have our big discussion on the budget. So we should be pretty much where we hope we'll be. We will still potentially make changes on March 5th. And if we do that, we'll do that prior to you having your open hearing. So we might have some additional changes. We'll run those by you, and then we'll do the open hearing. But at the March 5th meeting will be where you will vote the final version of the budget that then goes on to the town's process for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was, you answered actually all of my questions. We're mainly around the benefits and the new positions. So thank you. That was really comprehensive on those two issues. Questions? Oh my God.
Thank you.
Okay, so now there'll be a quiz. Now how would
So now we need to vote to approve these preliminary, or do you want to do the...
So do you want to, you can vote on this, and then we can jump into capital, or we can do capital, and then you can vote both of them.
Well, it's,
whichever
yeah,
one.
absolutely. Let's do capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tab 5 is your capital. And so right now, capital for fiscal year 25 is our guess is that we will fund this with E&D, much like we have done in the past. So we are estimating that we won't have a ask for the towns for capital for fiscal year 25. If we look at the 5 years, I think so you'll see bigger numbers going out, right? So for the big ticket item for fiscal year 26 is the turf and the turf in the field. That initially had been sort of in 25. However, obviously we can't do that. And I've also learned you got to plan like 2 years in advance if you want to get anything done. There's no way we could approve that now and get it done this summer. So we will start working on everything now, get it approved in 25. So we'll be doing it the following summer, because this summer it's going to be the bleachers.
Do you need more lead time than that? Like, is there ever a time where you need a 2-year lead time to get a field? And like, is
part of it too is that it's the time constraint that we have to do the projects.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So we've learned, but that's starting to become our norm now. So it happened to us with the rooftop units. As you can see, even though we try to rush through the bleachers, it just the constraints that we have of when we can do the work dictates sort of our timing. So that's the one thing I wanted to say, so that if you looked at last year, you would see that we've moved that out. The things that we've put in for 25, one's actually sort of a something we haven't discussed, but in fiscal year 22, you did approve $55,000 for some replacement of ductwork insulation. When we started that project after the roof replacement, or the roof restoration, when they pulled the insulation off, we found a huge section that had completely rotted. And so therefore it's a project that we're bringing forward. We have an estimate to replace the rotted, flow for the air, and then we have to have it rewrapped. So we've done we were able to do the insulation on one piece. We have upper and lower there that we were able to wrap. When they started to do the lower is where they saw all the rot. So the cost to replace the rotted insulation or the rotted ductwork is $130,000. We have $20,000 remaining from fiscal year 22 funds, so that's why you see $110,000 listed for fiscal year 25. If the region ends up approving this for use of E&D, once you approve it, then we're set to go put everything in place, so it'll be ready to get done this summer. The real capital that comes off our on-site insight report are some AON rooftop units. So those are just the smaller air conditioning units, sort of smaller rooftops. Like here, for instance, part of the middle school was air conditioned before we did the big retrofit. So it's those rooftop units that are now over 20 years old that it's ready to be replaced. And those we feel that we'll get started now. We will have a chance of getting them in this summer. And so there's 4 of those. We're in the process of getting updated quotes. We're carrying the number in here right now that is the inflation-driven number from on-site insight. But our HVAC company was actually out today on the roof looking at the ones that we want to replace, and we should have quotes for you hopefully in January in case that changes. And then, as I mentioned, we were talking about fiscal year 24 financial report. We're putting another $100,000 in as a placeholder right now for the bleacher replacement, just to give us a little more comfort level. If you assume that we thought we covered the $500,000, now we have the extra $100,000. This is sort of picking up that extra $100,000 and pulling it from the E&D. Then looking out forward, you'll see we've got other rooftop units being replaced. The roof of the high school, which we delayed in order to do the rooftop units, is out in 27. We have no concern of pushing that out based on the current condition and some of the repairs that we've made. So we'll continue to assess all this, but we're really at this age of the building. There's a lot of HVAC equipment. And that's really what we're looking at. So take out the bleachers, it's HVAC equipment, and the rooftop at the high school. So this is sort of the, we look at 25 as being things that we know, and then 26 through 29 are our best guess as of right now of what's coming down the pike. The good news about capital is that fiscal year 25 is the final debt payment on the middle school. And if you look at what the debt payment is when you look at your fiscal year 25 budget, it's over $700,000. That's money then that is going to come out of the budget that will allow the town sort of some money that's already in their budget based on our assessments to be applied to capital and some of these larger items that we need. So that was a little bit of our thought process as well, is to time some of that funding where we could, knowing that the last debt payment was in 25, we can take that $750,000. It's already sort of in their numbers, and then that can help sort of soften the capital numbers going forward. And then eventually, hopefully, it'll be free money. But at least it's a way to sort of help smooth the cost.
Okay. All right. Questions? No?
Straightforward.
All right. So, may I have a motion to approve the preliminary budgets as presented in our books this evening so that they can be presented to both towns for budget planning processes?
Maggie Sharon, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Kate for a second.
Thank you. Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Dawn. That was really great. Very,
Do we have to do
very
the capital budget
understanding.
separate?
No,
we did
both
it all
budgets.
together.
I
Okay,
said the budgets.
Oh, thank you.
So,
We're very efficient here.
yeah. And I, well, anyway.
Combining roles
Yeah.
whenever possible.
All right. So now we can move on to the consent items, which includes the minutes approval, grants and approval of grants and donations, and it also includes ACID. Are we?
I can talk you through that.
Yeah, because we're voting on approving that.
Yes, so you should know what the details are. And then
Yeah,
you can vote the
that
whole
was
package or leave something off.
Yeah, that was.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That was my question on this. I mean, we'll approve the donations, but seriously though, do you want to go ahead and walk us through that?
So before I dive into ACED, I just want to note that the Chickering PTO donated $3,000 towards the Challenge Success program. So as you know, SDSEF has kind of taken a hiatus. We don't have necessarily a funding source, so it should be known that all 4 PTOs have donated $3,000. The other 3 PTOs are maintaining their funding and will go to them when we need it to pay out for presentations or whatever. Chickering wrote it so that it'll be under Dawn's purview and your purview to write the checks. So,
But the other PTOs have approved that amount.
yeah, so it's $12,000 total.
That's great.
For the Challenge
Wonderful.
Success
Thank you, PTOs.
Yep.
Will that be the same going forward?
For the short term,
Okay.
yeah, until we come
So
up with
are they going to sort of incorporate this into their budget, or the different PTOs are
It's
handling
under
it differently?
discussion. I think the DSEF, when they dispersed their funds, designated some of the money to be used for both Challenge Success and Span DS. And so we have a little bit of wiggle room to think long term, does DSEF come back in a different capacity, or do we work more with the PTOs to do some of the fundraising that DSEF used to do for Challenge Success or for innovative projects? We have to figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of ACED, so we have the contract, right, which specifies teachers with lanes and years of service. And then in the back is the appendix, which explains the stipends that are paid for going above and beyond the teachers' duties during the school day. So these are recommended changes to Appendix C. There's a period of time from the beginning of the year till October 1st where people can submit a request to adjust or add something to Appendix C. And then there's a committee that comes together that includes myself, Dawn, a building leader from each building, and at least 3 DSEA reps. And we sit down and go through all of the proposals and decide which we think are worth moving forward to you for your consideration. So this is what the ACED committee is recommending you consider. The first is the mock trial advisor. Currently the ratio is a 2.0, which means that a 1.0 unit is roughly $1,500, $1,575. So when it's a 2.0, they're getting twice that. So right now, to be the mock trial advisor, that person is getting a 2.0 stipend, so roughly $3,100. Based on student enrollment and the number of practices that have increased over time because they are so talented and attending more competitions, the advisor has asked that we increased their stipend from a 2.0 ratio to a 3.0 ratio. The committee thought that was fair, looking at other clubs and groups that are similar in size and function. Same with Science Olympiad. This is actually a new program. We had just added Science Olympiad to ACED, was it last year or the year before? And the enrollment has doubled. And so now they have 2 teams due to the number of students. So we're asking that the 2 advisors who split the stipend are asking to move from a 2.0 ratio to a 2.5. And again, looking at comparables, we think that's a fair request. Moving into the athletic fund. And Dawn's going to help me keep all this straight.
Yeah.
So as you know, for boys hockey, we have a co-op with Weston. And we have, because it's a co-op, we have the opportunity to keep all of the students who want to play. We do not cut on hockey, boys hockey.
Required.
It's an opportunity to keep everyone.
Gotcha. Opportunity, okay.
So we actually have 2 teams. We've been running 2 teams for a number of years, the varsity and the JV. We have been borrowing the varsity assistant coach to run the JV team as the head coach because Weston also pays for a assistant coach. So we've just kind of borrowed, but we haven't been paying them the full coaching stipend to manage JV. So what we're asking is we're using a 2.0 to cover the assistant to do the head job of the coach. So we're asking that we actually give the head coach stipend, which would be roughly 2.75. Does that make sense?
Are you adding a person?
No,
Or you're just
no, we're just
paying them
increasing their
for their
pay for their
work.
actual job.
We're giving them what they actually would get if they were one of our programs and they were doing a JV team.
Right.
Do we have girls ice hockey or just boys ice hockey?
We used to have girls. And
We're in a co-op with girls.
Okay.
But we don't host it anymore, so you don't hear as much about it.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have sometimes 2 to 3 girls.
So if I'm a girl and I go to high school here, I can play hockey?
Yes, you can.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, with a co-op that has like 4 or 5.
It's okay.
Yeah, I know.
But,
Yeah.
you know.
It's like golf.
Yeah.
It's co-ed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving. Are we okay
Thank
with
you.
hockey?
Yes.
We're just going to pay the coach for what they've been doing.
Makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay. In tennis, so as you know, we tend to try to run these programs for 2 or 3 years to ensure interest before we build the stipend into the budget. So we have been able to field a JV boys and girls tennis team for the last 2 years. They're moving into the 3rd year, and it's very popular. We are sure moving forward that we'll need 2 teams. So previous to now, we have been funding the JV coach's position through the athletic revolving fund. So as students bring in their $335, we take from that. So this is no added increase in cost to you. Really what it's doing is taking that money that's sitting in the athletic revolving fund and moving it over to the operating budget and making it an official title in Appendix C. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then the Washington, D.C. trip coordinator, which that stipend happens to be split, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day how many people. The set amount is the set amount. Currently, it's a 1.0. So to plan the D.C. trip, these folks are getting $1,500 total. Given the complexity of travel these days, student needs, the fact that our student body is diversifying with abilities and requirements, all of it, we think that we have been getting a very good deal paying $1,500 and that it's only fair that we increase that to a 3.0 ratio.
True. I will add on to that one that I think that when we go to build these into the budget, because you're version 2.0, obviously if you approve these tonight, I have to build these into the various categories in the budget. But the Washington, D.C. trip, I think we'll split fund with this middle school activities fund, and it'll be partially then covered by the fees that we collect for the trip. We can build that in, and so that it's not all coming out of the general fund. And so that
seems fair.
Yeah.
So to that point, the total for these recommendations, which is nearly $13,000, is not really $13,000 addition. It's coming from either the athletic revolving fund or perhaps taking some from the student activities fund. So it's not a full hit to your budget.
Okay.
So happy to take questions on that.
Anyone have questions?
Is there one mock trial advisor or?
There's one. Yeah.
I'm assuming that more requests came to you than are appearing here. So thank you and the rest of the committee that so thoughtfully vets these, because I feel like anytime that we say no to teachers and hardworking coaches is really hard. I just want to give them everything. So you guys do the hard work so that I feel like we are able to, be excited to support these programs more robustly.
Ditto. Other questions on this? Any questions on the other items that are part of the consent agenda? No?
I'm really appreciative for the newsletters and for the new plan of rolling the updates that these, Mr. Smith and Ms. Keegan used to do wholly separately for us into the newsletters, because we get the same information.
Yeah.
I think it's more efficient with their time, and it's great for those of us that don't have kids in these schools to be able to peek into what's going on. It's really nice. Thank you.
And it's a work in progress. We have a Canva competition happening right now among some of the administrators. We're trying to come up with the best headers that we're all going to have the same headers. So it's to be improved. You're about to see edition 2.0 in the new year.
Nice.
Okay.
I like some more.
Healthy competition.
Yes.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the items that are on the consent agenda?
Colleen Britt, so moved.
Thank you, Colleen. Do I have a second?
Mark Healy, second.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. And there are informational items there and items for the January 16th meeting. Anything
So I've had 2 community members email me about schools that have taken cell phones out of the schools, and sort of the academic and behavioral outcomes that were improved. I didn't know if we wanted to consider this as a district in terms of what impact are cell phones having on our academics and behavior, and if it's something we should look into. I've heard ideas of giving students light phones that they could just contact parents and nothing else on it, really, like 3 numbers or something like that, district issued, but something to consider.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
Anything else? This is the part I always screw up. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Angie Johnson.
Can I have a second?
So thank you, Sharon. Second.
All in favor? Okay, and so we will adjourn at 8:12 p.m.